Welcome into episode 169 of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm August Trometer, and Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you. See, I was going to say Happy New Year, after I said this stuff. Like California pulls the country down privacy road, a twist on privacy issues and Ring, and an analog security warning. And see, then I was going to say Happy New Year and stand by for another edition of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. Heading into 2020, you may have noticed that just about every big site you visit has a new privacy policy. You have California either to blame or to thank. We may revisit that question in a bit. According to a piece from Business Insider, in the past month, major tech companies have scrambled to overhaul their privacy policies in time for 2020. You've seen a notification or gotten an email about it from sites including Facebook. The reason is a sweeping California law passed by the California State Legislature in 2019 that set a 1st of January deadline for companies to comply with new privacy standards. Excuse me, Mr. Expert Man, I know it's been a while, but you have dusted off your mic. What can you tell us about this law?
Well, a little bit. We're not lawyers, so we can't give people all of the ins and outs, but we can sort of do a big picture. And the law is called the California Consumer Privacy Act. And what it's supposed to do is give people more information about how tech companies use their data and more control over whether they can use that data. Basically, the federal government wasn't moving fast enough and California just pushed ahead without them. The CCPA it's sort of like the American version of the European GDPR, and companies will now have to clearly explain what is happening with your personal data and give users a lot more control over it.
Now, what kind of controls are we talking about?
Well, there's a lot. Sites are required to feature a link on their homepage, allowing users to opt out of having their data sold to third parties. They're also required to tell users what information they collect, including everything from your name to your browsing history. You're most likely to find all of that in the privacy policy. Businesses are also required to give a more detailed list of the third parties your personal data is shared with, and that also is likely in the privacy policy. Companies will be required to provide, upon request, the data that it has tracked about you. Some companies like Google and Facebook do that already. And the most important one to me is that the price you pay for a service is the same, even if you opt out of sharing your data. So a company can't charge you more or less depending on whether or not they let you track them.
I seem to remember somebody trying something like that, although you can almost say that is what some streaming video services do in a way, right? I mean, not exactly, but like if I want to watch something and I'm okay watching it with commercials, it might be free or it might cost, a small amount. Whereas if I want to watch without commercials, it's going to cost me more. Or if I want to watch with no commercials, it's going to cost me more. Not exactly the same thing, though, because that's just not paying to hit the back of my brain. I mean, what we're talking about is tracking, which is obviously a much bigger deal.
Yeah, so unless that information is being shared back with the advertiser in some way, all of your demographics and that kind of thing, then charging a different tier is okay. But if they're sharing that information, then that's, again, not a lawyer, likely not okay.
Now, in reading up on this, there were a couple of points that I found interesting. First, the Business Insider piece that I mentioned earlier says the law only applies to businesses that earn more than $25 million annually, that collect data on more than 50,000 people, or make more than half their revenue by selling people's data. What's your take on these numbers?
That's the part of the law I don't like because it opens up some pretty big loopholes. I understand that the lawmakers didn't want to make it onerous to small companies, but big companies with big lawyer teams will find a way to take advantage of that. In addition, it always tends to be the smaller companies that have weaker security, so hackers will be targeting them for your personal information now.
What's funny is you talk about lawyers and loopholes. I saw something. I probably shouldn't say it because I can't remember the exact wording, but basically Facebook had argued at one point that this shouldn't apply to them because they're not actually selling user information. They're just using that information to sell ads. God bless them, 2020 ain't going to change Facebook, man. Now, the other thing that I found interesting, and people outside of California may wonder why we're spending so much time talking about this. There was another piece from Business Insider about this that indicates that wherever you live, changes like this may be coming for you.
Yeah, there's a saying that as California goes, so does the nation. And for the most part, that's kind of true. Imagine if you're a company outside of California and you're looking at either complying with the CCPA or turning your service off to the most populous state in the country to avoid lawsuits. Most companies will likely comply. On top of that, there's a lot of other states that are considering similar laws, probably almost copy and paste whatever California does, making it even harder for companies not to comply.
Now, I will tell you what I wish is that the presentation was standardized. I came across one the other day, and sadly, I don't remember which site it was, but I took a screenshot of it, leaving out important things like, the URL, unfortunately. But the CCPA page had, I want to say, 4 different font sizes on it. And the smallest one was the one that told you how to opt out of having your data sold. And then the way that you opted out wasn't 100% clear. So it was a toggle, but it didn't have something as simple as sell or don't sell. It was just a toggle with nothing over it. And then you had to read the finest of fine print paragraph to find out if you don't want us to sell your data, you need to turn this toggle off.
Yeah, I think there's going to be adjustments to the law, especially once lawsuits come into play. As I mentioned earlier, companies, especially big ones, are always looking for loopholes. And I can imagine some company making that page all 1-point text and very light gray, making it completely unreadable. But they'll tell the judge, but it's there. It's what was required.
Yeah, it's like that thing that happens like at the end of a car commercial on the radio. And for people who don't know what radio is, ask your dad. But I mean, there are certain things that you're required by law to say at the end of a car commercial. I think it was like offering loans or something like that. And it's like faster than that FedEx guy used to read. I mean, it's sped up, but its pitch is still the same. But none of it, it's practically, it makes no sense when you hear it. And yet, well, they said it because they were required to, and everybody heard it. They just thought it was a chipmunk. It's fine. Now, I said earlier that we might touch on the blame or thank question as far as CCPA and it, sort of rolling across the country. Assess this for us, if you would. Is this good or bad? And is this the kind of thing that you personally, and again, you're not speaking for the planet, but that you personally want to see every state, adopt across the nation?
Well, I've said multiple times on this show that the only way we're going to be able to protect our data is by legislation. So that's a good thing. But the devil is always in the details, and we won't know for a little while whether to blame or thank. All that said, I'm very happy that some lawmakers are taking personal data privacy very seriously.
Well, here's something new for 2020. A story about the Amazon-owned security cameras Ring. Of course, it's not new. We've talked about the DIY police state concerned homeowners are helping to build with their Ring cameras. We've talked about Ring's less than stellar track record when it comes to facial recognition, particularly the faces of people of color. And now we're talking about a hacking, although here's the twist, we're probably not. Engadget says a guy from Alabama has filed a class action lawsuit accusing Amazon and Ring of failing to do enough to secure their security systems against hacks. This, of course, does include his. That's why he called a lawyer. He says a stranger compromised his Ring outdoor camera and spooked his kids as a direct and proximate result of the company's inability to protect its devices against cyber attack. He also says Ring's response was evidence of the company blaming customers. What justification do you think they would have for doing that, August?
What it comes down to is that Amazon/Ring told the guy there was no evidence of a breach whatsoever, and that the likely culprit was a hacker that had gotten access to a different site and that the user was reusing the same password. Was he? Who knows? Could Amazon be borrowing the Nest strategy, which we talked about many episodes ago? Maybe. But Amazon is basically claiming credential stuffing.
Ah, yes, credential stuffing. Remind people what that is.
Trust me, it's not as good as turkey stuffing.
I know, right? That's why I got excited. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's not going to go on a plate.
Credential stuffing is when a hacker obtains your username and password from a site. They hack into a database, or maybe they find something online that has those, and then tries those same login credentials on a myriad of other sites and services. And if you're reusing your password, they'll get a match sooner or later.
Okay, walk me through that, though. I mean, even with someone reusing passwords, how do we go from that to somebody being able to take over your Ring or your Nest or your router? I mean, whatever it is. How do we go from I had an email account 10 years ago that the username and password was taken to now they're taking over my printer?
Well, Ring and Nest are cloud-based, and you can log in using your browser. But also, because they're cloud-based, you expose yourself to the same credential stuffing that we're talking about if you're reusing a password. And that applies to your network as well. If somebody can figure out how to get, if they're a neighbor or that kind of thing.
I feel like an idiot. You can tell that I don't have a Ring or a Nest because it never occurred to me that you would go to something like Nest.com and log into your Nest, because that just feels, I don't know if that's actually the URL, but that's insane to me. It's probably not that easy, right? Tell me, please. Although I guess if people are buying them by the millions, it doesn't really matter. Even if it was hiddennest.com, that's going to get out to bad guys and they're going to start, man alive. I guess the other thing I wonder about, because I don't know that Amazon actually said it was credential stuffing, but certainly they implied that. Do we know that this was definitely bad password management? Or, might a bad router or network management play also have been part of this? Is it possible that this guy actually is using strong passwords, but because he did something stupid with his router that they got in that way?
It's hard to tell. It really could be either. Either somebody hacked into their Ring account or they were monitoring that person's network. Either way, better password management would have helped. As it happens, just yesterday, I got a new router installed. And the first thing I did was log into the router and change the credentials, because the credentials were admin for the login and admin for the password.
Oh, okay.
And it's crazy the companies still get away with that.
See, in the Seth Rogen movie that I'm writing about this, is it Seth Rogen? He's the comedy one, right? Not Joe Rogan. He's the conspiracy one. In the Seth Rogen movie that I'm writing about this, you got a call 5 minutes later with the guy who just installed it going, "Hey, what's up? You changed the password."
Played by Jim Carrey.
Sure, why not? Yes. Oh, Cable Guy too. Please don't let that happen. Now, Engadget says that the suit that this guy in Alabama has lodged formally levels accusations of breach of contract, invasion of privacy, negligence, unjust enrichment, and violating California's unfair competition law through misleading representations of security. If it achieves class action status, it would ask Amazon and Ring to compensate victims and implement improved security procedures and measures. If it's a credential stuffing attack, though, I mean, this guy's got no prayer.
I'm not a betting man. Okay. Yes, I am. I definitely wouldn't bet on the victims to get a settlement. As we've talked about before, any Ring or Nest hacks have generally been because of bad passwords, like admin, which I mentioned earlier, or password, or any of the lists that we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we've talked a million times about things people should do. Strong passwords, unique passwords, ideally using a password manager, two-factor authentication, of course. I guess what I'm wondering is, who needs to do what about informing people? I mean, really driving home this message. We're here every week, talking about this, but we're talking to a subset of a subset of a subset of people. I mean, start with not everybody listens to podcasts, and then not everybody listens to security podcasts, and, it goes on from there. I mean, what has to happen to drive this message?
I would say if you're listening right now, then you're several steps up on everybody else in terms of security. And I would have a serious talk with your friends and family about passwords. It's such a boring topic, I know. But just start it with an innocent question. Like, oh, you got a Ring. Nice. Are you using the same password? And then tell them how that can be hacked. Tell them about password management, and then tell them that you love them. Big changes come in small steps. And if you can get even one person to change their habits, that's a win for all of us.
A decidedly low-tech security warning coming up. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, a word about MacScan 3 from Secure Mac. Macs are everywhere. People using Macs more means more personal information, more medical information, financial information, more of our lives flowing through the Mac. You know it, I know it, and bad guys know it, making each Mac a tempting target. Protect your Mac with MacScan 3. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It's developed by Secure Mac, trusted names in computer security and developers of exceptional security software for over 20 years. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Surf more securely with MacScan 3. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by Secure Mac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. We'll wrap the day with a bit of security advice that is amazingly low-tech, and I love it for how low-tech it is. For its simplicity, August, I love it for that.
I like the fact that we're just doing a story that isn't about passwords.
It's kind of cool, right? And it's not about encryption, and it's not about, it's so simple, and yet, well, you'll see. When you're writing checks, which I know almost nobody does anymore, or, filling out forms by hand, which almost nobody does anymore, this year, do not abbreviate the year. Stop abbreviating 2020. Police say it leaves you open to fraud and could cost you big. That's the word from USA Today, which also wants to remind you we're eating more beets. But no, we're not. We're all in such a hurry that writing 4 numbers to indicate the year, well, it takes twice as long as writing 2 numbers, doesn't it? Wouldn't it be simpler to write 2 numbers the way we did in 06, 08, heck, even the way we did just 2 weeks ago in 19? What's wrong with writing 2-0 for the year 2020, August?
Well, just writing 2-0 could be the start of a whole other year.
Huh?
Exactly. The way USA Today explains it, this year's abbreviation is easily changeable and could be used against you. The concern is that scammers could easily manipulate a document dated 1/1/20 into 1/1/2000 or even 1/1/2021. Hamilton County, Ohio Auditor Dusty Rhodes says writing out the full date could possibly protect you and prevent legal issues on your paperwork.
Okay, I am seriously one of the only people I know who writes physical checks. Not many, but, I still do write 1 or 2 a month. I think I get the dangers, but can you give us an illustration, please?
Sure. Let's say you got a loan, and let's say that loan starts on January 15th. If you abbreviate the 2020 and write 1/15/20, someone could come along and add a 19 to the end of your 20, making it 1/15/2019, and you'd owe a whole year of back payments. In addition, let's say you wrote somebody a check, dated again 1/15/20. The person you wrote the check to could add a 21 to the date, making it 1/15/21. That basically invalidates the check, and they could sue you. Or they could hold on to it, cash it in 2021 when you're not expecting it. There's a lot of crazy scenarios here, so just be careful.
I'll be honest, I'm concerned about the people with whom all of these people are doing business. They sound nefarious.
Exactly.
So just in case, here is our advice. When filling in a form or writing a check, be sure to allow yourself 1.5 extra seconds for those 2 extra digits.
That's a lot of seconds for 2 digits.
It's a lot. Well, it is, but it really, you're writing at most 24 checks a year, maybe. So what's that? Like a minute? You could spare a minute for your own security, can't you? Also, use a pen. Preferably not one of the fancy erasable kind. That's I'm looking forward to that memo coming from the police next week. Hey, if you're looking for more security news and how-tos, the place to look is securemac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes not just for this show, but for the last shows that we've done, for any shows coming up once we actually do them, the place to find it all. And you can actually listen to every episode right there as well. securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you'd like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.